This video contains spoilers for episode 1 of Fionna and Cake. You have been warned. But with these 2 new episodes being released, Fionna Campbell and Simon Petrikov, Fionna Campbell has a ton of stuff inside the episode that makes it just amazing. So let's get into it. Pretty much the entire first sequence of this episode is the dream sequence that we're already aware of from the trailer and sneak peek. A couple things though. Cake does drop some foreshadowing when she says,
"You have a bus to catch,"
to Fionna after they're fighting this rat bus. And just as Fionna is about to get KO'd, she gets saved by some ice. Now, who is the source of this mysterious ice? You guessed it, Ice Prince. And the Ice Prince isn't even over yet. Fionna mentions him a lot throughout this entire episode, which is interesting because his character alone doesn't look like Simon, but also doesn't look like the Ice King. So who could this be and what could it represent? But with these new icy abilities, Fionna spawns on some ice skates and mentions
on Sprinker action, go!
Which might sound a little random, but it's a nod to a character from a novel, which kind of sparked speed skating in the United States. Of course, Fionna comes out victorious, and of course, the Ice Prince congratulates Fionna and Cake, but something seems off, and if you notice the way he's talking to Fionna,
and so funny and interesting,
it sounds very reminiscent of how Ice King wrote Fionna and Cake to talk about him in his fanfics.
You saved the day, Mega Rad Cool Guy.
In fact, Fionna asks who the Ice Prince really is, and the Ice Prince grows a strange smirk, almost like something's up, that all these characters in this universe are up to something, which is something I'm gonna bring up a lot throughout this video. But just as they are about to touch hands, the Ice Prince starts imitating an alarm clock, the ice melts below Fionna and Cake, and they drown further and further into the water. And it turns out this was all a dream, which we kind of expected from the sneak peek and trailer, but this confirms it. Now this is where things start to get really juicy, so I'm gonna need y'all to put your thinking caps on and get ready. Starting off with the BMO alarm clock. Now we all knew that this looked like BMO, but if you listen to the voice, it's BMO's voice as well.
Snooze, 10 minutes.
Then we get some amazing shots of Fionna looking around her apartment, with her sink full of dirty dishes and a TV nestled right in the corner. But if you zoom in here, this almost looks like a picture of Normal Man. Interesting, but then in the TV scene, this picture in the right side of the screen has duck feet, but it kind of looks like Jake or Jermaine with boxing gloves on. And if her apartment wasn't enough of a sign, Fionna is absolutely dreading life. And then we cut straight to the intro. Now let me tell you, when I first heard this song in the sneak peek, I fell in love right away, so I am so happy that it's the intro song of all things. But there's a lot to talk about in this single intro sequence, so let's get started. Starting out with the title card itself. It gives off very sitcom vibes, and we also get an outside shot of her apartment. But as she's running outside of her apartment, she starts off in a waitress outfit, then transforms into a maid outfit, then to a construction worker outfit, then to a mailman outfit, then to a lifeguard outfit, and then finally, a fast food worker outfit. 2 things to know here. This is the scene that we saw in the sneak peek, and look at where she's catching up to. A bus, which Cake foreshadowed in her dream at the very beginning. But this isn't the only bus that was foreshadowed. Then we just get some amazing shots of Fionna in a brand new art style, which I am in love with, coupled with a very cute shot of Fionna and Cake in her apartment. One thing that I actually noticed from this shot is if you zoom into the top left corner, that kind of looks like one of the daggers from the episode Rainy Day Daydream, which if you didn't know, was an episode in season 1 and was kind of the introductory episode to how the imagination works in Adventure Time. Coupled that with what Fionna and Cake is, very interesting. This next shot shows Cake sick, which might seem like a little gag here, but it will be very important for this episode. Then we get some amazing shots of Gary. That's right, this is Gary, not Prince Gumball or Gumball, Gary. And these scenes showcase Fionna and Gary's relationship, which is as really good friends, which we will see more later in this episode. Then we see some new shots of Marshall Lee, and a couple things to point out from this scene specifically. First, probably the most obvious one, look at the ducks, very similar to the 2-headed ducks that we see in the intro of the original series. And then something important that I really want you to note down. Look at where they're at. They're at some kind of fountain, and look at where the water is coming from. Frogs. Remember that little detail? Because it will be huge. Then we see DJ Flame, which we saw from the trailer, and oh my gosh, they kissed. So they're confirmed dating, right? Okay, never mind. Then we conclude the intro sequence with a nice little compilation of all the new characters that we see, with this final shot of Cake and Fionna enjoying some spaghetti in her apartment. But this last scene has a ton of things to talk about. First and foremost, if we zoom in on what I thought might have been Jake or Jermaine with boxing gloves, it's not. Looks like a frog with duck legs. But second, if you zoom a little bit to the left, what's on the TV? A program called Cheers. Now remember this as well. And finally, if you go all the way up to the top and you look at that poster, it looks like a triangle with an eye in the middle. And if you remember from the sneak peek and trailer, that rooster, look at the background. It's that same triangle. I'm so excited to find out what that might mean. Now from this scene alone, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I'm forgetting, so please let me know. But getting back to the actual episode, we pick up right where we left off. Fionna is absolutely miserable and doesn't want to go to work, but she turns on the TV and guess what's on? Cheers, filmed in front of a live studio audience. But as she starts scrolling through different channels, Cheers is the only channel on. There are 0 other channels.
Cheers is filmed before a live studio audience.
Couple that with the fact that we see Cheers in the intro sequence, it sounds like Cheers is a pretty big thing in this world. But remember back to the episode Simon and Marcy. What's the scene Simon plays out for Marceline on the TV? He sings a theme song that we will talk about later, but he says 2 things.
Filmed before a live studio audience. Norm!
Now what do we hear from the Cheers that Fionna plays on her TV?
Cheers is filmed before a live studio audience.
Evening, everybody.
Right off the bat, something isn't right. But as we continue, Fionna tells Cake that she keeps having these good dreams. In fact, she's had the same dream 3 times in a row, with the Ice Prince being there every single time. But as Fionna explains her dreams to Cake, if you look in the top right corner, she has a poster with the word Mars on it. And if you know Mars and Adventure Time, they're not new. Things just keep getting weirder and weirder. But oh boy, let me tell you, they're only gonna get even more weird. Which sounds crazy, but it's true. But remember how I said in the intro, we see Cake get a little sick? Well, Fionna notices, and we cut to a POV of what Cake sees and hears. And it's all gibberish, unless it's food or her name, but something catches her eye, and it's coming from the freezer. So, Cake rushes towards it, and it turns out it's ice. Cake needs ice. In fact, she just rolls around in it. If you zoom into the top right corner, we see a coat hanging from the coat hanger, and it vaguely resembles Betty's coat, the one that we see when she jumps through the time portal, but that could be a bit of a stretch. But another interesting thing to point out here is that Cake became obsessed with this ice, but only 3 days ago.
You haven't really eaten in like 3 days.
Meaning something happened 3 days ago to cause Cake to act like this. Very interesting. She even declines her favorite tuna sandwich. And Fionna finally has enough and just decides that she's gonna call the vet to get Cake in. But even from this scene, there's a really interesting thing to point out. First, we get a better look at that dagger from Rainy Day Daydream. But if you zoom into the left side of the screen, we see a figure with a sword pointed high in the sky on top of a hill. Now, in my opinion, this is a nod to the direction that they were going to take Martin in the first place. If you didn't know, in the storyboard for the Lich episode, Bucko explains how a hero of Ooh was unlawfully cast into the Citadel, and Billy tells Finn that that's his dad. I'm guessing this is the direction that they were going to take Martin in the first place, that he was going to be some type of hero just like Finn was, but they ended up scrapping that and making him a deadbeat dad. At least that's my opinion. But she gets the vet appointment booked around lunchtime, so she has to take Cake with her for work, and as she steps out of her apartment, we saw this in the sneak peek, but then the camera ominously zooms in towards the door and then fades to the refrigerator, and then out of nowhere, ice comes out of the ice dispenser. From the very get-go, something's not right about this ice, or in fact, anything cold for that matter. And everybody noticed this in the sneak peek, but we do see Magic Man's hat, which was last worn by Betty. We see the gender-bent Ash and the human Wildberry princess, along with a traffic cone that's upside down and a dead rose. Now on the bus, this was already speculated, but but Fionna is confirmed to be a tour guide on this bus. Specifically, she works for Queenie's Bus Tours.
Welcome to Queenie Bus Tours. My name is Fionna Campbell, and I will be your guide today.
And we'll see Queenie in a little bit, but you can tell she's very obviously miserable. Like, very obviously. We get some more confirmation on who these gender-bent characters are with Hot Dog Princess, which we knew from the trailer. And to be honest, I didn't know who this yellow guy was, and some of you pointed out that he looks like a banana guard. And I'll have you know, you are definitely right. This is a banana guard. And the person in the back is actually Fern, confirmed, but I'll touch on that in a little bit. Then we get 2 more close-ups of Abraca Danielle, and this mysterious lady who we end up finding out who she is very soon. But notice the newspaper she's holding, titled question mark with the ice crown with 1 gem, coupled with Cake the cat who can stretch and talk in the bottom left, and Betty. Very interesting. We'll actually start to see a lot of Betty imagery very soon. Last but not least, we see Starchy and Marshall Lee. It's amazing seeing Donald Glover back as Marshall Lee, so this is perfect. And later in the episode, Donald Glover has an amazing song. Well, Marshall Lee has an amazing song, but you get it. So remember when I said we would get a lot of Betty imagery in this episode? Well, here's the first one. This is very obviously a statue of Betty. And a couple things to note from this scene alone. The frogs. Remember when I said in the intro sequence to remember the frogs? Well, this is the statue that Fionna and Marshall Lee were sitting at. Now, frogs aren't new in Adventure Time. That might sound dumb, but hear me out. In the episode Temple of Mars, they were used as a symbol of change. And seeing them here coupled with Betty, very interesting. Fionna also mentions that the statue underwent renovation 12 years ago.
It underwent a renovation 12 years ago.
Who's the statue of?
Don't know, dude.
Which, coincidentally, is the exact amount of time that's passed in the Land of Ooh universe since Betty fused with Gold. So something happened that caused Fionna and Cake's universe to appear different. Or maybe something else is going down entirely. But as the tour continues, they pass by the aquarium. And as Fionna reluctantly points it out because she hates her job, she notices some similarities between the penguins and the Ice Prince's penguins. And from here on out, something changes in Fionna. She immediately starts asking if anybody on the bus knows how to decipher dreams and what they mean. And she talks about how she thinks the universe is trying to tell her something, which is something I pointed out in the beginning, that almost everybody in this universe is trying to tell her something. But Marshall Lee thinks he's cracked the case and tell her it's because DJ Flame just broke up with her. So what happened in the intro sequence is actually true, sadly. But she's persistent that that's not what it is, that her dream means something more significant than anybody else. And as she starts to talk about that, everybody else starts to think that their dreams mean something too. From being a hot dog to banana to confirming that this is Fern. Not only that, but in the credits of the episode, Fern is credited as a character in this episode. So this is Fern. But as they continue with the tour, they pass by an ice skating rink. Now, if you remember, that was the very thing Fionna was doing in the beginning of her dream. But also, Cake freaks out because it's something cold, ice. So Cake goes all crazy trying to get off the bus to get to that ice rink, and Fionna tries to stop her with pretty much no luck. But remember how I said Queenie was gonna appear? Well, it turns out that mysterious passenger was Queenie, going all undercover boss mode to see what Fionna was actually doing, because she got some pretty bad reviews. And it's not looking good for Fionna, because she explains how Cake is sick, but Queenie just thinks she's bringing a rabid animal on the bus tours. And just as it looked like Fionna got Cake under control, Cake sees the ice skating rink again and goes bonkers, to the point where Queenie tells the bus driver to stop the bus, and they all get off.
That was hot dog with no horseradish.
And after a culmination of a ton of things, including Marshall Lee never paying for his bus rides, and Fionna not really caring, Queenie straight up fires her. And if you couldn't tell that this new series was rated TV-14, you can now. But now without a job, Fionna begins walking down the street, passing all these amazing shops. And these shops are very detailed, and I'm sure there's a ton of stuff I'm missing, but the only one that stood out to me was this sword that we see in the very beginning, and how it looks very similar to the sword that we see Fionna use in the comic series. Oh, and also maybe the oozers? Could be a stretch, but it looks a little similar. And as she's talking about what jobs she could even do now, she passes by another shop that kind of looks like Party Bears. And then as she continues, she passes by Lemon Hope, which we saw in the trailer. And then this character, who I have no idea who was meant to represent. It's the same voice actor as Bimo, but I don't know. And then this last character who is playing with fushigi balls? What's going on? Well, there's a couple of things to point out from that scene. First, First, as she's walking down, she's explaining to Cake how the city is so boring. There's nowhere to go, there's nothing that happens, there's no cool people, just that the overall city is boring. But that's why I think these characters are trying to say something, because as she's saying that none of these guys are cool, the very character right next to her is playing with fushigi balls, the coolest thing that you could possibly do. What's going on? But on the warm-hearted sign, as she passes by that building, we can see a mural of tree trunks. It's the same silhouette along with that apple, indicating her beloved apple pies. Now this is just so cool because if you didn't know, the voice actor of Tree Trunks, Polly Lou Livingston, sadly passed away. So seeing her make a cameo in this new series is so amazing. But as she continues to walk down the street, the very next building in the background window, it looks like a lobster. And seeing a lobster in the Adventure Time universe is not new and means something a lot deeper. We first saw it in the You Forgot Your Floaties episode, in which Betty gains the madness of Magic Man in order to try to save Simon. But in that episode, Simon emerges from the pool with lobster hands saying the words "You forgot your floaties," meaning she jumped off the deep end without fully realizing what she's even getting into. At least that's my opinion. Then Fionna gets caught behind 3 human banana guards who are talking about,
you know, Jerry from HR?
Which is super important for the next episode. But I'm not going to talk about the next episode yet because this video is already going to be way long. But remember the conversation that these human banana guards are having. Nonetheless, Fionna is done with it and she just pushes them right out the way. Not a care in the world. She has a mission and no one's stopping her. Then these 2 roller derby players come out of nowhere and actually admire Fionna's pushing ability to those human banana guards. Even this interaction is very important for the next episode. So if you can, please remember it. However, she declines. And then we get an amazing outside look of Butler's Buttery Buns, which is the place Gary works. I'm sorry, it's so hard to say Gary. Now we get to see Gary working on his latte, and you can very obviously tell he has those perfectionist characteristics that both Princess Bubblegum and Prince Gumball have. But look at the art that he made on his latte. It's PB Swan that she rides. And then we just get an amazing interaction between CB and Gary. It's amazing.
Just kidding! They're over me!
And then we finally understand where Fionna was going while she was walking to the street. Butler's Buttery Buns. And then pretty much just this entire scene between Fionna and Gary perfectly summarized their relationship, that they're just really good friends. But Fionna asks Gary how long they've known each other, and Gary responds,
I don't know. I guess like forever.
Which could indicate 2 things: an over-exaggeration because they've known each other since they were pretty much kids, or he doesn't remember because this is all a fabrication, because he seems genuinely confused but still answers forever. But that's a little wild, so let me calm down. Then, out of nowhere, we find out who Butler is. Beatrice Butler, the human version of Butterscotch Butler from Fionna and Cake. And let me tell you, they nailed the dynamic that Prince Gumball and Butterscotch Butler had in the Fionna and Cake episode, down to the very T. I love this. But after Gary being heartbroken about his new invention and his 64-step plan in opening his own bakery, Gary reminds Fionna of her vet appointment, which of course she forgot about. So she takes some of his new cookies on the road and quickly dashes out of there. And then we get a new shot of the city she lives in, and let me tell you, it looks amazing. But this city is just ridden with glitches everywhere and a sign that says sign. Is that a sign? I think it is. But remember when I said that Marshall Lee sings an amazing song in this episode? Well, here it is. And it's amazing. But unlucky for Fionna, Marshall Lee's majestic vocals weren't enough to stop her from having an even worse day, as she runs right into him, causing coffee to spill all over her uniform, which she has to return because she got fired. With no money and not being able to get her money back for her deposit, she tells Marshall Lee that there's no way she's going to be able to afford rent this month, let alone the vet. And it turns out Fionna's landlord is Marshalene's mom. And in gender bent terms, that means that that's Marshalene's father, which makes sense because Marshalene's father, Hudson Abadir, is a demon, lord of evil, and the ruler of the Nightosphere. And if you know what landlords are, they're also not the nicest people. So although Marshall Lee couldn't help Fionna with her rent problem, he can help her with the vet problem, saying he knows a guy by the name of Ellis who won't do it for money, but he'll do it for some of those good treats that Gary made. But with no other options, Fionna accepts. So she heads off to see this guy named Ellis, and she has to go through the city gardens, which is where we see the statue of Betty. So as she goes deeper and deeper, she meets a mysterious gardener who brings her to the beautiful flower field that we saw in the trailer. This mysterious person talks about how all these flowers, which can actually be considered weeds, are
Chill and harmonious. My beautiful misfits.
which makes a lot of sense, coming from the person that very obviously represents Huntress Wizard, but we don't know this mysterious person's name yet, but we will. Then we get the scene from the trailer in which she blows on the dandelion, and it turns out she didn't get everything, and pretty much sums up her entire day. And we also get this awkward scene between them, which was so funny. But it turns out this mysterious person's name is Hunter.
My name is Hunter. God.
Now, I know I haven't been pointing out a lot of things, but that is because I haven't been given a lot to work with, so bear with me. But that's about to change real soon. Hunter can bring Fionna to the person she's looking for, Ellis. And the place where Ellis is located looks very similar to where the episode Wheels takes place. Just look at it. But another thing to note here, look at this tree. There's initials carved in a heart on the tree, B+M. Now, I'm not quite sure on who this could mean, so please let me know. And it's revealed that this is LSP, the human version of LSP, but first name Ellis, last name P. And LSP is voiced by none other than Pendleton Ward, the original person who played LSP in the show.
Ah, stranger! Get her, boys! Eat her face!
But it turns out LSP really isn't the veterinarian type and ends up conning Fionna to diagnose Cake instead of him. And then we get the iconic shot from the trailer, and out of nowhere we cut back to Cake's POV, and we see these blues sparkling in the distance, which if you remember, indicates that something cold is nearby. So Cake immediately springs towards it, running out of the deep forest and back into the city garden. And as they run through the city gardens again, we see two more characters, who, if you couldn't tell, are the gender-bent versions of Lemongrab 1 and Lemongrab 2, along with their Campbell, now as a dog, and they are portrayed perfectly.
Sit! I command you to sit!
And finally, it's revealed that Cake is running towards an ice cream stand, which, of course, is cold. But if you notice, the person working at the ice cream stand looks very familiar to the Ice Queen. In fact, her ice cream cart depicts the mountains in which the Ice Kingdom is located in. And to Cake, there's this emanating blue glow coming from inside the ice cream stand, to which she jumps right in and disappears, followed by the portal closing as well. And the episode ends there, but there's even more in this outro sequence. Look at the dreams of Fionna and Cake. What does it look like? It resembles the treehouse, but in the human world. Now, what makes me say that? First, you can see the boat with the umbrella right on top. But second, we know for a fact that the Ice Kingdom is located on the left, indicated by those mountains on the left, and the Mystery Mountains on the right, which is indicated by those mountains on the right. So this is 100% the treehouse, but in the form of Fionna and Cake's human world. And I won't spoil anything about episode 2, but their dreams are different in episode 2. Now, I am sure that I missed a ton of things to point out because there were just so many things in this episode. And boy, am I not looking for episode 2. There are so many things in that episode. But if you don't want to miss it, make sure you subscribe because I'm going to try to get the analysis of episode 2 done relatively soon. But this video alone is going to be super long, and that video will be even way longer. So if you don't want to miss it, please subscribe. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. Again, tell me what I missed because I know I missed a ton. But until the next time where we deep dive into episode 2, I will see you all later. Stay adventurous.